Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my flashcard series as part of 5 minute apps on Thunkable. So, this one will be considerably longer than 5 minutes, but nevertheless, it is still incredibly simple to make. So, initially, I thought of doing the actual coding part of the flashcard app using a data table, but that got considerably block heavy, so I decided to teach you another new and interesting method that is less block heavy and also will come in handy, quite handy in your future coding pursuits. This is called objects. So I want you to imagine a shopping list. So your first item will be apples, a kg. Your second item will be probably cucumbers, half a kg. Your third item will be wheat, 5 kgs. Your fourth item will be butter, maybe 100 grams, and so on. So if you notice, each single item of this list, it has two parameters, that is the name of the item and the weight of the item. Now it is possible to edit the number of parameters of a single item of a list. If, for example, you were to add cost, so you would have butter 100 grams that costs 120 rupees, and you could add more than that also. You could add brand as well, so you have a single item of a list. List item number 4, you have your name of item, which is butter, weight of item, which is 100 grams, cost of item, which is 120 rupees, and your brand of item, which is, I'm going to go with Amul, of course. So you can increase or decrease the number of parameters of a single item of a list. Until now, we've been dealing only with lists which have a single value per item. Now we're going to be dealing in objectified lists. Oh, wait, that doesn't sound quite right. But the lists have objects as each individual item. So we're first going to initialize a stored variable so that whatever the user adds to their list, it stays and they don't have to keep redoing their efforts every time they open the app. So we're going to call this stored variable T and D, which stands for terms and definitions. Now, the first thing we need to do is every time the screen is opened, every time the app is opened, in fact, we need to check that the stored variable is not null, because a stored variable is automatically initialized with a null value. And if it is a null value, then we can't add items to it as it doesn't know that it needs to be a list. So if it is null, that is the user has not interacted with this app before, then you have to initialize it to an empty list before the user can actually add and interact with the list and add flashcard terms and definitions. So when screen 1 opens, the first thing we're going to do is use an if block. If, and then here we go to logic. And now we're going to go to the variable section. Stored variable t and d equals to null. Then we're going to set it to an empty list value instead. And that's it. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is initialize a couple other variables. Now, these variables need not be necessary over here, but they will be necessary in the second screen, which is actually the functionality of the flashcard. We're going to initialize those in a bit, and the first thing we're going to do is work on the submit buttons functionality. So what we know is that when the submit button is clicked, two things need to happen. You need to add the term and definition to the list after checking that neither of them is empty, because sometimes people can press the submit button accidentally, or they don't mean to, or they're just testing out the app, in which case we shouldn't add it to the list. Otherwise, the poor people are going to get blank flashcards when they practice later. So what we need to do is first check that when the submit button is clicked, before we add anything to the list of objects, then we're going to first ensure that it's not blank. So we're going to use an event for this. When button submit is clicked, we're going to use if, and we're going to use an and over here because we need to check two inputs for the fact that they have text in them. And if we do it any other method, it just gets too time consuming and block consuming. So we have to use an and block from the logic section. And we have to use a not equal to block from the logic section as well. Just grab an equal to block and use the drop down. So we're going to get the text from both of them. So as you can see, we first checked that the text from the definition input is not blank. And now in the other segment of the and block, we're going to check that the text from the term input is also not blank. So now we've done that. We don't need to do it at any other point in the app, and that has just saved us a lot of code. So now that we've checked that, we're going to add an item to the list. So use the list block and in list add at last, insert at last. And what list are we inserting something at the end of? The stored variable t and d, of course. So let's grab that from the variable dot list stored variable t and d, insert at last. And now we're going to go to the object section. Create object. You see the small pink block and it has a plus sign to its left, which you will click and add as many fields as you need. In this particular situation, we only need two. One is term, and the other is definition. So as you know, as with our earlier shopping list example, we had 4 fields per item. This has 2 fields per item. So for example, the first item in the list would be, for example, hello, and the definition could be greeting. So we're going to add these text inputs right over here, so that we're just grabbing it. My bad, that could have messed things up badly. So we're going to get text input terms text and text input definitions text. And now that's sorted, all we have to do is clear the inputs afterwards, so that the user can add terms as quickly as they can. They're not hindered by having to clear the text input after themselves every time they enter it. So text input terms text blank, and we're going to duplicate that and ensure that text input definition is blank as well. And now that's pretty much sorted. The next thing we have to do is ensure that when the flashcards button is clicked, the user is navigated to the next screen. And that's pretty much it for our first screen. And let's give it a go. Let's test it out. Hello. The definition is a greeting. And when we submit that, it clears. And when we click on flashcards, it takes us to this screen. Come back for the next video when we work on the flashcard apps code. Bye bye.